I think the Buccaneers are in the weirdest position in the NFL right now, and it's hard to describe as Tom Brady has officially retired. He has announced it. He is not in the NFL anymore, and this was the entire Bucs team. He was the entire team. Not saying that there wasn't players. What I mean by that is he built this team to fit his needs and everything that he needed and to win the Super Bowl. Congratulations, Bucs fans. You have gotten your Super Bowl after almost 20 years of not having one. They got another one, and I'm proud for the Bucs. And if you're a Bucs fan, be happy. Be happy of what you got to witness and to have the greatest player in football of all time to be on your team and to get you a Super Bowl and to prove Bill Belichick wrong. But moving on, that's what I want to do here, is to look forward, enjoy Brady's career, celebrate it. His retirement is something to be celebrated. As a Seahawks fan, I'm happy to see him go. But I do selfishly wish he was playing another year. I can appreciate the greatness because he truly was one of the, if not the best player of all time. He is, in my opinion. I do think that we need to look ahead as the Bucs have a very weird future in front of them. They're losing a ton of pieces, not only in Tom Brady. Chris Godwin's most likely going to be gone. Playoff Lenny, most likely going to be gone. We're also talking Tom Brady, obviously. Gronkowski, I don't think he's going to stay as well. O.J. Howard's a free agent. Do you bring him back? Cameron Brate's still on the roster. You're going to have to revamp the tight end room as well and have another weapon other than Mike Evans, because at the time right now, Mike Evans is the only wide receiver that's truly a weapon for them right now on that roster that could be a threat. And if they bracket or send a double team or throw him into weird coverages where he is going to be just completely blanketed, they're going to need to get another weapon. But obvious questions that we have to look at is the quarterback position. They don't have a quarterback on the roster that I think is a viable starter in the NFL. Whatever your opinion is of Kyle Trask is yours, but I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. I think he's a backup. But they are going to have to make a move either in the draft or picking someone through free agency or a trade to get a quarterback. And I think there's a couple options. I'll go through them. But I'm going to keep going through some of the guys that are free agents or potential losses when it comes to this offseason. I've said Gronk, Brady, Lenny, Godwin, but not to mention Ndamukong Suh could potentially retire. I could imagine he got a Super Bowl win. He's going to end up retiring potentially. Carlton Davis is a potential re-sign if you want to bring him back. The secondary was one of the biggest problems when it came to the Buccaneers. It'll be interesting to see what they do in that cornerback room and that safety room. I think Antoine Winfield Jr. is a guy that you absolutely keep. I don't think he's not available, but it's a guy that you try to build around. I think he's a really good player that could develop and continue to get better and revamp that secondary. JPP, I could imagine he retires. Not to mention Ryan Jensen's an older center, but I do think you try to keep him. Try to keep as many of these guys on that offensive line. Don't let Tristan Wirfs just be the sole guy there. I think Ali Marpez is another person that you try to keep on this roster as long as possible. The reason why I say it's weird is it's not so clear to go into a rebuild. If I'm the general manager, I try to retool. There's a lot of pieces to like about with the Buccaneers. They have a lot of young pieces, a ton of veterans. Obviously, a lot of people were comparing it to a retirement home. But this is the offseason where you move a ton of the guys that were potential retirees or guys that were just ring chasing. You're not going to get the same kind of luxury of having guys that want to come play for Tom Brady. Now you have to truly show your talent as a general manager or a head coach. And Bruce Arians is also a guy, and when I get into the quarterbacks, it's going to be very interesting to see what Bruce Arians does. Is he really a guy that's going to be there long term? And his offense is so structured for a guy like a Tom Brady, a real intellectual guy that can take over an offense for himself and really understand the playbook back and forth. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of quarterback they bring in, truly to know what Bruce Arians wants out of this offense, but we'll get into that in the later part of the video. And I did look ahead into their 2023 free agents. Levante David is one of the biggest names that pops up. He is a Buccaneer for life. He's one of the best players, if top 5 best players for the Buccaneers of all time, which is crazy to say of their history, but he is a Buccaneer heart and soul. I would be very disappointed to see if they let him go, but he is an expensive contract. It'll be interesting to see at that point of his career what he's going to ask for from the Bucs. Not to mention Devon White. He's a team option. You obviously pick up Devon White's contract. I think it's his 5th-year option. You pick up Devon White. He's one of the freakiest linebackers, one of the fastest linebackers in the NFL. You keep him, keep that team as young as possible. You really got to push your young players into the spotlight when it comes to this team. If it's a rebuild, it's a rebuild. If you have to go into the top 10, because they do have all of their draft picks for the next 25 years. Not saying 25 years, I'm saying till 2025 they have all of their draft picks. So it's not like they were giving up draft capital like the Rams were to make win now moves. It was just people wanted to come play for Tom Brady. The Bucs had a really good roster that clearly was being held back by Jameis Winston. And I do hope Jameis Winston ends up having a good year next year wherever he goes. Honestly, he wouldn't be a terrible fit with the Bucs, ironically, as he would go into Bruce Arians' offense. Bruce Arians, I don't think is a big fan of Jameis, but I just think it's funny. I don't think it'll ever happen, but Jameis would fit. And that's the kind of realm of quarterbacks that they're going to have to look for. I think best case scenario, you could get a Derek Carr, but Derek Carr most likely is going to stay with the Raiders now that they got Josh McDaniels, which I think is an interesting hire that I'll make my own video about. I think Derek Carr is more off the table. I think maybe a guy like, I don't know, a Marcus Mariota is very popular, but I don't think Mariota fits what Bruce Arians wants. A lot of people are just trying to think of a quarterback that could be a quick fix for them. And you have to realize they need a quarterback that's going to fit what Bruce Arians wants, unless Bruce Arians wants to leave. Because his offense has been notorious to shut down a quarterback's confidence in the first year. And if they persevere, they tend to have a better second year because it's so complex in what he wants from their quarterbacks. I'll be very curious to see where they go in that direction because it will truly depend on what Bruce wants to do going forward. Is he the long-term coach, or are they going to want to move on and potentially get a new head coach and a new regime? I personally would want to go in that direction just because you won your Super Bowl. I don't think you're going to be able to rekindle that fire to get back into the playoffs, especially in an NFC South that's wide open now. The Saints are bad. The Panthers are not looking great. The Falcons aren't looking great. And now the Bucs are a little shaky now that they have lost their leader. It's going to be wide open in the NFC South. Right now, as of today, I think the NFC South might be the worst division in football, right there with the AFC South, ironically. But it'll be very curious to see who steps up to the plate, because one of them has to. The Saints got to, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Bucs, one of them has to step up. And it'll be curious to see how these teams get aggressive, because I think the Falcons might get super aggressive in this offseason, potentially trading Calvin Ridley and maybe keeping Matt Ryan. It might just be a 7-9 team, or potentially it was at 8-9 now with the new schedule, on who gets in from that division. I'll be very curious to see moving into next year. I would think it would be most weird divisions in all of football, might even be worth it in its own video. But right now, we're talking about the Bucs, and we have to look ahead at some of their assets. Mike Evans takes the most cap out of anybody on that roster right now. Not to mention you have Devon White as another asset. Shaq Barrett is a huge contract, and he's a player that could be a key piece in moving forward with the Buccaneers. Is he a guy that they paid too much money to that could end up faltering them and be a huge liability? Because he did not have a great start to his career, and then he blossomed during that big Super Bowl run, and they gave him the big money as they should have. It'll be interesting to see, is he a guy that works better when other teams are focused on other players such as Devon White, Levante David, Vita Vea, Ndamukong Suh, and was he just able to get the better matchups, or is he truly a premier pass rusher moving on? And also another guy, Vita Vea, you keep on to him because he is one of the most game-changing players in all of any run defense. He is like probably the number one pick in a lot of people's eyes on who you would want to build a great run defense around. That's what I mean. They have a ton of assets. Vita Vea is young. They have a lot of young pieces to build around. That's what made their Super Bowl team so good. It wasn't just all veterans. It's not a Lakers team. It's like you have a bunch of young players that are blossoming at the same time as these veterans are. And it's picking and choosing which veterans you want to keep around, pushing these young guys into the spotlight, and using the draft capital correctly. Who is going to be the best players that they're going to be able to get, because they're going to have a lot of holes moving on. And I think you either get a wide receiver. I think a Drake London would be a really interesting pick here. As well, you have to look at quarterback, and the quarterback draft class isn't looking great. It's very interesting to see what the Bucs can do moving forward. If I'm them, I would look into a rebuild potentially, and not a deep rebuild. I wouldn't sell all your assets. I would continue to see what you can get for these veterans and move on. And I don't know really who you could get at the quarterback position, because Bruce is probably the biggest question mark in my eyes of what can you do next? What can you do for me now? I understand Tom's gone. That's a huge loss. I think it was an expected loss. You didn't know when it was going to happen. I honestly thought it could have happened last year. But what can the Buccaneers do moving forward? I think it'll be the most interesting thing in this offseason of what they can do with the positions that they have, and where can they move on without Tom Brady, the greatest player in all of football. If you're at this point of the video, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. What do you think the Bucs are going to be able to do in this offseason? We are almost at 100 subscribers. I really want to hit that before the end of February. I'm trying to produce as many videos as possible. If you're seeing this in a couple days, probably around Monday or Sunday, it's just because I'm in Texas right now. I am iced in. You're seeing me wear this a ton. I'm trying to get these uploaded as much as possible with the internet connection that I have. But thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.